The morning sunlight streamed through expensive curtains as 12-year-old Tyler Bennett stuffed another failed math test into the bottom of his designer backpack. Red marks covered the paper like angry scratches, with a bold 42% circled at the top. His stomach knotted as he imagined his father's face when he found out. Again. "Tyler, the car leaves in 5 minutes." His father's voice boomed through the intercom system that connected every room in their mansion. Tyler zipped his backpack and glanced at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. His private school uniform looked perfect. Crisp white shirt, navy blazer with the gold crest, and perfectly pressed pants. He looked like a success, if only appearances told the whole story. "Coming," he called back, his voice cracking. He grabbed his phone, sliding it into his pocket before racing down the marble staircase that curved through the center of their home. Robert Bennett stood in the foyer, attention fixed on his phone. As the founder and CEO of Bennett Tech, one of the world's leading software companies, he was worth over $11 billion according to last month's Forbes list. The man barely looked up as Tyler approached. "Your math tutor called yesterday," Robert said, still scrolling through emails. "Mrs. Chen says you're not applying yourself." Tyler's heart sank. "I am trying. The numbers they don't make sense to me." Now his father looked up, his expression a mixture of disappointment and confusion. "Numbers are the simplest thing in the world, Tyler. Either they add up or they don't." He checked his watch. "We'll discuss this tonight. I've arranged for Mrs. Chen to come for an extra session. But Dad, I already have 3 tutoring sessions a week. It's not helping. Then we'll make it 4, 5 if necessary." Robert's tone made it clear the conversation was over. "Money solves problems, son. It's just a matter of finding the right solution to purchase." The ride to school was silent except for the tapping of Robert's fingers on his tablet. Their driver, Miguel, occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror with sympathetic eyes. Miguel was one of the few staff members who'd been with the family long enough to remember the days before Tyler's mom left 3 years ago. "Good luck on your history presentation today," Miguel said quietly as they pulled up to the school entrance. Tyler managed a small smile. "Thanks." At least he was good at history. And English. And science, actually. Just not math. Never math. The hallways of Westfield Academy were filled with the children of CEOs, celebrities, and politicians. Tyler nodded at familiar faces as he made his way to his locker, trying to project confidence. Nobody needed to know about the failed test, or the knot of anxiety that tightened in his chest whenever numbers appeared on a whiteboard. His best friend Liam was waiting by their lockers, skateboard tucked under one arm despite the school's strict rules against them. "Dude, did you finish the math homework?" Liam asked, pushing his wavy hair out of his eyes. Tyler's shoulders tensed. "Sort of. Can I copy it? My dad took my PlayStation until my grades improve, and I got distracted trying to finish that game before he confiscated it." "Trust me, you don't want my answers," Tyler muttered, spinning his combination lock. "I barely understand any of it." Liam frowned. "But you have 3 tutors. 4 now, apparently." Tyler shoved books into his locker with more force than necessary. "Dad just added another session with Mrs. Chen." Harsh. But hey, at least your dad cares. Mine's too busy with his new wife to notice much of anything unless the school calls. The first bell rang, sending students scurrying toward classrooms. Tyler's stomach churned as he remembered that math was his first class of the day. And worse, Mr. Phillips had mentioned they'd be getting their tests back. The math classroom felt like a torture chamber. Tyler slid into his seat near the back, trying to make himself invisible as Mr. Phillips began passing out the graded tests face down on each desk. "Overall, I was disappointed with these results," Mr. Phillips announced to the class. "Many of you clearly didn't study the material thoroughly. We'll be reviewing the concepts again today, and I expect everyone who scored below 70% to have their parents sign their tests." A few groans echoed through the room. Tyler didn't make a sound. He already knew what was waiting for him when he flipped over his paper. When Mr. Phillips placed the test on his desk, Tyler waited until the teacher moved on before turning it over. The red 42% seemed to pulsate on the page. It wasn't even his worst score this year. "Dude, what did you get?" whispered Liam from the desk beside him. Tyler placed his arm over the paper. Don't worry about it. Mr. Phillips began writing equations on the whiteboard, and the familiar fog descended over Tyler's brain. The numbers and symbols blurred together, becoming a jumbled mess that made no more sense to him than a foreign language. He dutifully copied everything down, knowing he'd stare at the same incomprehensible notes later tonight while Mrs. Chen sighed in frustration. Tyler, can you solve this problem for us? Mr. Phillips' voice cut through his thoughts. Tyler looked up at the equation on the board. He might as well have been asked to decipher ancient hieroglyphics. His face grew hot as 20 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Mr. Phillips's expression softened slightly. Take your time, but no amount of time would help. The symbols swam before his eyes, rearranging themselves into meaningless patterns. His palms began to sweat. I don't know, he finally admitted, the words barely audible. Perhaps you should pay closer attention, Mr. Phillips suggested before calling on another student who immediately provided the correct answer. The rest of the day passed in a blur. During lunch, Tyler sat with his usual group, laughing at jokes and discussing the upcoming school dance, pretending everything was fine. No one except Liam knew about his struggles with math, and Tyler intended to keep it that way. By the time the final bell rang, Tyler had almost convinced himself that things would be okay. Maybe the extra tutoring would finally make something click. Maybe his dad would eventually accept that math just wasn't his subject. Miguel was waiting with the car when school let out. How was your day? He asked as Tyler climbed into the back seat. Fine. Tyler's standard answer, regardless of how the day had actually gone. Your father called. He won't be home until late tonight, but he said to tell you that Mrs. Chen will be arriving at 4:30. Tyler nodded, relief and disappointment battling within him. Another night without seeing much of his dad, but at least he'd have more time before facing questions about the test. The mansion felt emptier than usual when they arrived. Most of the staff were busy in their own areas. The gardeners tending, the expansive grounds, the chef preparing dinner in the kitchen, the housekeepers cleaning the rarely used formal rooms. Tyler headed straight to his room and pulled out the crumpled test from the bottom of his backpack. The signature line at the bottom loomed large. His dad would have to sign it eventually, but maybe if he improved enough with Mrs. Chen today, it wouldn't seem so bad. For 45 minutes he stared at his textbook, trying to make sense of the practice problems. The more he tried to concentrate, the more the numbers jumped and shifted on the page. By the time the doorbell announced Mrs. Chen's arrival, his notebook contained more doodles than math. Mrs. Chen was a stern woman in her 50s who had tutored children of the elite for over 20 years. She prided herself on results and had little patience for what she called mental blocks. Your father says you failed another test, she said as she arranged her materials on the desk in Tyler's study area. No greeting, no warm-up? Just straight to the failure. It was really hard, Tyler offered weakly. The material is grade appropriate. Now show me where you're having difficulties. For the next 2 hours, Mrs. Chen drilled Tyler on equations and formulas. Her voice grew increasingly tight as he made the same mistakes repeatedly. Tyler could feel his brain shutting down, panic rising in his chest every time she placed another problem in front of him. I can't understand why you're not grasping this, she said finally, removing her glasses to rub the bridge of her nose. These concepts are fundamental. Tyler stared at his paper, eyes burning with unshed tears. I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen sighed. Your father is paying me a considerable sum to help you improve, but I cannot do the understanding for you. She glanced at her watch. We'll try again tomorrow. Please complete these practice problems before our next session. After she left, Tyler looked at the stack of problems she'd assigned. It might as well have been a mountain to climb without equipment. He pushed the papers away and curled up on his bed, hugging his knees to his chest. Dinner that night was served by the household staff in the smaller family dining room, since his father still hadn't returned home. Tyler pushed his food around the plate, appetite gone. Is everything all right, Mr. Tyler? Asked Rosa, who had worked for the family since before Tyler was born. Yeah, just not hungry. Rosa frowned but didn't press. Your father called again. He said to tell you he'll check your homework when he gets home, no matter how late. Tyler's heart sank. There would be no escaping it tonight. It was past 11 when he heard his father's car in the driveway. Tyler quickly tried to make progress on the math problems, scribbling desperate attempts at solutions he knew were wrong. When Robert Bennett appeared in the doorway of Tyler's room, his tie was loosened and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Let's see the homework," he said without preamble. Tyler reluctantly handed over his work, along with the failed test that needed a signature. His father's expression darkened as he flipped through the pages. "This is unacceptable, Tyler. These are careless mistakes." He held up the test. "And this is embarrassing. The son of Robert Bennett failing basic math? I'm trying, Dad, I really am. Not hard enough, clearly." Robert ran a hand through his graying hair. "I built a tech empire from nothing. Numbers were my way out of poverty. And you have every advantage, every resource, and you're throwing it away." "Maybe I'm just not good at math," Tyler suggested quietly. "I get A's in other subjects. That's a quitter's attitude. No son of mine is going to fail at something as essential as mathematics." Robert's voice rose. "Perhaps you need more structure. I'm thinking of sending you to West Point Academy for summer school." Tyler's blood ran cold. West Point was known for its military-style discipline and rigorous academic program. "Please, Dad, no. Then prove to me you don't need it. I expect to see improvement by the end of this quarter." Robert signed the test with a flourish and handed it back. "I have a call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. Get some sleep. Mrs. Chen will be here again tomorrow." After his father left, Tyler stared at the ceiling, feeling more alone than ever in the massive house filled with staff, but empty of understanding. Tomorrow would bring another day of failure, another disappointed look, another reminder that he wasn't measuring up to the Bennett legacy. What none of them knew was that everything would change with the arrival of a new staff member, someone who would see past Tyler's struggles to the bright mind underneath, someone who understood that sometimes the conventional approach wasn't the right one at all. Diana Wilson stood at the gates of the Bennett estate, her second-hand sedan looking embarrassingly out of place beside the fountain that probably cost more than her former yearly salary. She smoothed down her simple black dress and checked her watch. 10 minutes early for her interview. Perfect. The security guard examined her ID with practiced efficiency. "Dr. Wilson? They're expecting you at the main house." Diana smiled her thanks, not bothering to correct him on the title. Few people outside academia called her doctor anyway, despite her PhD from MIT. And she certainly wasn't here for her academic credentials. As she drove up the winding driveway, Diana took in the manicured gardens and imposing architecture. 6 months ago, she would never have imagined applying for a housekeeping position, especially not at a billionaire's mansion. 6 months ago, she'd been a tenured professor of mathematics, publishing papers and lecturing to packed auditoriums. And then came the breakdown. She parked where indicated and took a deep breath. This job was temporary, just something to keep her mind occupied and her bills paid while she figured out what came next. After 15 years of academic pressure, departmental politics, and battling to be taken seriously as one of the few black women in her field, Diana needed space to breathe. The front door opened before she could ring the bell, revealing a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. "You must be Diana. I'm Mrs. Rivera, the head housekeeper." She extended her hand. "Welcome to the Bennett residence." Diana shook her hand firmly. "Thank you for considering my application. I know my resume isn't typical for this position." Mrs. Rivera led her into a spacious foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier. "Between us, your overqualification is exactly why Mr. Lopez, our house manager, was intrigued. We've had some trouble keeping staff lately. Mr. Bennett can be demanding." As they walked through the mansion, Mrs. Rivera explained the duties of the upstairs housekeeper position. Diana would be responsible for maintaining the family's private quarters, including the young master's rooms. "Tyler is 12, Mrs. Rivera explained as they climbed the grand staircase. "A good boy, but struggling a bit lately. His father works long hours, and since his mother left 3 years ago..." She didn't finish the thought. They passed an open door, and Diana glimpsed what looked like a study room. Textbooks were scattered across a desk, and math worksheets covered with red marks lay in a crumpled pile. "That's part of young Tyler's suite," Mrs. Rivera explained. "He has tutors almost daily, especially for mathematics. It's..." a sensitive topic in this household. Diana nodded, feeling an unexpected twinge of interest. In another life, she might have offered to help. In this life, she was applying to clean the boys' rooms, not teach him equations. The interview with Mr. Lopez was brief but thorough. He seemed impressed by her attention to detail and unfazed by her previous career. People come to service work for many reasons. Dr. Wilson, your academic background suggests discipline and intelligence, both valuable qualities here. He checked something on his tablet. Can you start tomorrow? The previous upstairs housekeeper left rather abruptly, and the rooms need attention. Diana accepted. Signing the necessary paperwork and receiving her uniform, a simple gray dress with the Bennett household insignia. As she was leaving, Mrs. Rivera handed her a staff handbook. One more thing, the woman said quietly. The family doesn't know about your doctorate. Mr. Lopez mentioned it to me because I oversee your position, but otherwise, we've simply listed your most recent job as education. Mr. Bennett can be particular about staff qualifications. Diana understood the unspoken message. Robert Bennett might find it strange or threatening to have a former mathematics professor cleaning his son's room. I understand. It's Diana, just Diana. That night in her small apartment, Diana read through the handbook. The rules were extensive. Specific cleaning products for different surfaces, proper ways to address family members, and strict guidelines about staying invisible unless called upon. She almost laughed at how different this world was from academia, where she'd fought so hard to be seen and heard. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. How'd the interview go? I got the job. Starting tomorrow. 3 dots appeared then. Still think this is crazy. You should be running a department, not cleaning some rich guy's toilet. Diana sighed. She'd tried explaining her need for a complete break, something totally different while she sorted through her professional burnout. The panic attacks during lectures, the insomnia, the feeling that despite her accomplishments, she was always one mistake away from losing everything. Her therapist had called it high-functioning anxiety, coupled with academic PTSD from years of subtle and not-so-subtle discrimination. It's temporary, she texted back. And peaceful. No committees, no grant applications, no students asking for extensions at midnight. Her sister sent an eye-rolling emoji but didn't argue further. The next morning, Diana arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, joining the other staff for a brief meeting before the family woke. Mr. Lopez assigned daily tasks with military precision. Diana, focus on the young master's rooms today. He leaves for school at 8:15 and you'll have until 3:30 to complete a thorough cleaning. Mrs. Chen, the math tutor arrives at 4:30, so please ensure the study area is immaculate. The Bennett household operated like a well-oiled machine, with staff moving efficiently through their assigned areas. Diana was shown to the supply closet by Rosa, a longtime housekeeper who handled the main floor. The boys' room gets messy, Rosa warned. He doesn't mean to be difficult, but lately, she shook her head. Just between us, those tutors make him miserable. I hear him crying sometimes. Diana felt a flicker of concern but kept her expression neutral. I'll make sure everything's in order. At precisely 8:10, she heard voices in the hallway and stepped discreetly into an alcove as Tyler and his father passed by. I expect Mrs. Chen to report improvement today, Robert Bennett was saying, his attention on his phone rather than his son. The West Point summer program application is on my desk. I'll submit it if I don't see progress by next week. The boy beside him looked nothing like the confident billionaire. Tyler's shoulders were hunched, his eyes downcast. Yes, sir, was all he said. After they left, Diana entered Tyler's suite and paused, taking in the space. The bedroom itself was what you might expect for a wealthy child. Expensive gadgets, a massive TV, gaming systems. But what caught her eye was the study area. While the rest of the room showed signs of normal 12-year-old messiness, the desk was chaotic in a different way. Torn papers, snapped pencils, and a math textbook that looked like it had been thrown against the wall. Diana picked it up, automatically smoothing the bent pages. It was standard pre-algebra material, nothing particularly advanced for a 7th grader. She flipped through, noting the frustrated doodles in the margins. On one page, Tyler had written, "I'm not stupid," in angry capital letters. As Diana cleaned, she found more evidence of the boy's struggles. Flashcards with basic multiplication facts hidden under the bed, A progress report with excellent grades in everything except mathematics, stuffed in the trash, and tucked inside a drawer. A framed photo of a younger Tyler with a woman who must be his mother, both of them laughing as they built a sandcastle. In the afternoon, Diana organized the study area, resisting the urge to look too closely at the math worksheets. It wasn't her place. She wasn't here as Dr. Wilson mathematics professor. She was just Diana, the new housekeeper. But as she dusted the bookshelves, a worksheet caught her eye. The problem was simple enough, a basic equation, but Tyler's work showed a pattern she recognized immediately. He was transposing numbers, mixing up steps in a consistent way that suggested. Diana put down her duster, picked up the paper, and studied it more carefully. 3 more worksheets showed the same pattern. It wasn't carelessness or lack of effort. The boy had dyscalculia, a specific learning disability with mathematics. She'd seen it in several students over the years, bright young people who excelled in other subjects but whose brains processed numbers differently. "What are you doing?" Diana turned, startled to find Tyler standing in the doorway. School must have ended early. He looked at the papers in her hand, his expression hardening. "I'm sorry," she said, quickly putting them down. "I was just organizing your desk." "Those are private," he said, his voice tight with embarrassment. "Everyone thinks I'm stupid." "I don't," Diana replied before she could stop herself. Tyler looked at her properly for the first time, suspicious. "You don't even know me." Diana finished arranging the desk, choosing her words carefully. "I know that someone who gets A's in science and English isn't stupid. Numbers can be tricky sometimes." A flicker of surprise crossed the boy's face, quickly replaced by the practiced indifference of the very wealthy. "Whatever. The new tutor will fix me, or I'm getting shipped off to drill sergeant school for the summer." Diana wanted to say more but remembered her place. "I've finished in here. I'll come back tomorrow to do your bathroom." As she gathered her cleaning supplies, Tyler sat at his desk and pulled out his math book, staring at it with the expression of someone facing a firing squad. Diana paused at the door, watching as he opened to a page of word problems and immediately began tapping his pencil nervously, a simple trick she'd taught struggling students came to mind, a way of visualizing word problems that often helped those with dyscalculia. It would take 30 seconds to explain. But it wasn't her place. She was the housekeeper, not a tutor. The Bennett family had plenty of money to hire experts. If none of them had recognized the signs of a learning disability, that wasn't her problem. Diana closed the door quietly and continued with her duties. Yet throughout the afternoon, as she cleaned other rooms, her mind kept returning to that worksheet and the angry "I'm not stupid" scrawled across a textbook page. At 4:30, as she was finishing the upstairs hallway, Mrs. Chen arrived for Tyler's tutoring session. Diana kept her head down as the tutor passed, but couldn't help overhearing the session begin in Tyler's study room. "Your father tells me you failed another test," came the woman's stern voice. "Let's review the basics again." "I don't understand why the numbers won't stay where they're supposed to." Tyler's voice was so quiet Diana almost missed it. "That makes no sense." "Numbers don't move. You're simply not focusing properly." Diana's hands tightened on her cleaning cart. The boy didn't need focus. He needed someone who understood how his brain worked, someone who could teach him strategies to work around his specific learning challenges, someone like Dr. Diana Wilson. But Dr. Wilson had left that life behind. She was just Diana now, the new housekeeper, who definitely wasn't going to get involved in the education of her employer's son. At least, that's what she told herself as she finished her shift and headed home, Tyler's frustrated face still lingering in her mind. For 3 weeks, Diana maintained her distance, cleaning Tyler's room and organizing his study area without commenting on the growing pile of failed math assignments. Each day brought new evidence of his struggles: crumpled papers, frustrated scribbles in textbook margins, and once, a calculator that had been thrown hard enough to crack its screen. Mrs. Chen's tutoring sessions continued without improvement. Diana would often hear their voices as she worked nearby, the tutor's growing frustration matching Tyler's increasing despair. After particularly difficult sessions, Diana would find tissues in the trash can and red-rimmed eyes when she glimpsed the boy at dinner. One Tuesday evening, Diana was finishing later than usual. A dinner party had required all hands on deck, and she'd volunteered to help with cleanup. The mansion was quiet as she made her final rounds, checking that everything was in order before leaving. A soft sound stopped her as she passed Tyler's suite. It wasn't quite crying, more like the controlled breathing of someone trying very hard not to cry. Diana hesitated. She should walk away. It wasn't her business. Instead, she knocked gently on the half-open door. "Tyler, is everything okay?" The sound stopped immediately. After a moment of silence, "I'm fine." Diana pushed the door open slightly. Tyler sat at his desk, surrounded by papers and textbooks. His hair stood up in tufts where he'd been pulling at it, and his face was flushed with frustration. "It's very late to be studying," Diana said carefully. Tyler looked up, his expression caught between embarrassment and defiance. "Dad says I can't play any video games until I finish these problems. But He trailed off, then added in a smaller voice, "I just can't make them work." Diana glanced at her watch. Nearly 10:30 p.m. and the boy had school tomorrow. She'd promised herself not to get involved, but seeing him there, a child alone with an impossible task, broke something inside her. "Maybe I could take a look," she offered, stepping into the room. "Sometimes a fresh pair of eyes helps." Tyler hesitated, clearly weighing his embarrassment against his desperation. Desperation 1. "It's these word problems. I have to set up the equations, but I don't know which numbers go where." Diana pulled up a chair beside him, keeping a respectful distance. The worksheet contained standard pre-algebra word problems, trains traveling at different speeds, age comparisons, mixture problems. She recognized the rigid format Mrs. Chen had been drilling, a methodical approach that worked well for some students, but clearly not for Tyler. "Let's try something," Diana said. "Instead of starting with the equation, let's draw what's happening." Tyler looked skeptical. "Mrs. Chen says drawing is for elementary school." "Well, Mrs. Chen isn't here at 10:30 p.m., is she?" Diana smiled, picking up a blank sheet of paper. "Trust me for 5 minutes?" Tyler shrugged, which Diana took as agreement. "Okay, this first problem is about 2 trains. Let's actually draw them." She sketched 2 simple trains on the paper. "Now, this train is going 60 miles per hour starting from Chicago." She labeled one train. "And this one is going 75 miles per hour starting from Detroit, which is 300 miles away." She labeled the second train and drew a line between them, marking it 300 miles. The question asks when they'll meet. Instead of jumping straight to an equation, let's think about what's physically happening. Both trains are moving toward each other, so they're both eating up this distance between them. She traced her finger along the line. What can we say about how fast they're closing the distance together? Tyler studied the drawing. They're both moving, so it's faster than just one train. Exactly. If one train covers 60 miles in an hour, and the other covers 75 miles in the same hour, how much of the distance between them gets closed in that 1 hour? Tyler's eyes widened slightly. 35 miles? Perfect. So if they close 135 miles every hour, and they need to close 300 miles total, how many hours will it take? Tyler hesitated, then reached for his pencil and wrote down the division. 300, 135. He started the long division, but Diana noticed he kept mixing up steps. "Try this," she said, taking a different approach. "We know 135 goes into 270 exactly twice, right?" She waited for Tyler's nod. "And 300 is 30 more than 270. So we need 270, 135, which is 2 plus a little more for that extra 30. Tyler followed along, his brow furrowed in concentration. "So 2 hours plus a little more?" "Right, now how much more?" "We have 30 more miles to cover at 135 miles per hour. That's a fraction of an hour." 30 divided by 135, Tyler calculated slowly. "That's about 0.2? Close. Let's check. 135, 0.2 would be..." Diana let him work it out. 27, Tyler said after a moment. "So it's a little more. Maybe 0.22? That works. So our answer is approximately 2.22 hours, or 2 hours and about 13 minutes. Tyler checked the answer key at the back of his book. 2 hours and 13 minutes. He looked up at Diana with something like wonder. "That's right. Want to try another one?" she asked. For the next half hour, they worked through the word problems using drawings, diagrams, and real-world logic, rather than memorized formulas. With each problem, Tyler needed less guidance. By the final question, he was drawing his own diagrams without prompting. "This," Tyler said as they finished, "this makes sense. Why doesn't Mrs. Chen teach it like this? Diana chose her words carefully. Everyone learns differently. Some people can look at a formula and immediately understand what it means. Others need to see it, draw it, or connect it to something real. I'm not one of the formula people, Tyler said, shoulders slumping. Neither was Albert Einstein, Diana replied. He was a visual thinker who struggled with traditional math education. But he did okay for himself in the end. Tyler looked skeptical. Really? Really. The way your brain works isn't wrong, just different. And different can be powerful. As Diana stood to leave, Tyler gathered his completed homework with a strange expression. Part relief, part confusion. Why do you know so much about math? You're the... He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable with finishing the sentence. The housekeeper? Diana supplied with a small smile. I had another life before this one. I taught mathematics at a university. Tyler's mouth fell open. You were a math teacher? But then why are you cleaning your room? Diana finished for him. It's complicated. Sometimes people need a break from their usual lives, a chance to step back and breathe. Did you hate teaching math? Diana leaned against the doorframe. Not at all. I loved it. But sometimes the environment around the work becomes difficult. I needed some distance to figure things out. Tyler seemed to absorb this, nodding slowly. Does my dad know? No, Diana said. And I'd appreciate if we kept tonight between us. I'm not supposed to be tutoring you. But you could, Tyler said quickly. You explain things way better than Mrs. Chen. I actually understood what was happening with the trains. Diana hesitated. She'd already crossed a professional line. Getting further involved could jeopardize her job, the very simplicity and anonymity she'd sought. But seeing the hope in Tyler's eyes made the decision difficult. Let me think about it, she said finally. For now you should get some sleep. It's nearly midnight. The next day, Diana cleaned Tyler's room with extra care, noting with satisfaction that his completed homework was neatly placed in his backpack. When she made his bed, she found a note under the pillow. Thank you for helping me. The trains made sense because I could see them moving. Can you show me more tricks like that? Diana tucked the note into her pocket, conflicted. She'd come here to escape the pressures of academic life, not to take on a struggling student. Yet something about Tyler's situation pulled at her. She recognized in him the same desperation she'd felt as a young girl, the frustration of being smart but unable to demonstrate it in the way others expected. That evening, Diana left another worksheet on Tyler's desk, one she'd created herself, with visual approaches to common math problems. She didn't sign it, but she circled a problem about basketball player heights and wrote, "Start here." For the next week, they developed an unspoken routine. Diana would leave custom worksheets with visual approaches, and Tyler would complete them, leaving questions or notes about what helped most. They barely spoke directly about it, maintaining plausible deniability if anyone noticed. Then came the next math test. Diana was cleaning the hallway bathroom when Tyler burst into his room after school, flinging his backpack onto the bed with a whoop of excitement. She pretended not to notice, continuing her work until he appeared in the bathroom doorway, holding up a paper with a red 72% circled at the top. I passed, he announced. His face split with a grin that made him look his age for once. Not just passed, I got a C. Diana put down her cleaning cloth, allowing herself to share his moment. That's wonderful, Tyler. What made the difference? I drew everything out like you showed me. And for the train problem, I actually remembered the shortcut. His excitement dimmed slightly. It's still not an A, though. Dad won't be impressed with a C. It's a huge improvement, Diana pointed out. And more importantly, you understood the material. The grades will follow. Tyler nodded, still looking at his test. Mrs. Chen is going to be so confused. She kept making me do the same problems over and over, and nothing changed. Then suddenly, he trailed off, his expression growing concerned. You won't get in trouble, will you? For helping me? Diana hadn't considered that Tyler might worry about this. I won't get in trouble. But it might be best if we keep our study arrangements between us for now. Like a secret mission, Tyler said, his mood lifting again. Exactly. Operation Math Rescue. Diana smiled. Can we keep working together? I have another test next week on fractions and decimals, and those are even worse than word problems for me. Diana knew she should refuse. She'd already gone further than she'd intended. But seeing the transformation in Tyler, The confidence that had replaced despair made it impossible to step back now. "Tell you what," she said. "I'll leave some materials about fractions on your desk tomorrow. They'll use pictures instead of just numbers, and if you're struggling, maybe we can find a few minutes to talk through it. That would be awesome." Tyler's enthusiasm was contagious. "I actually kind of want to do my homework now. That's never happened before." As Diana watched him hurry back to his room, she felt a familiar satisfaction, the one she'd experienced countless times in her teaching career, when a student finally grasped a difficult concept. It was addictive. That moment when confusion transformed into understanding. Perhaps this unexpected detour in her career path wasn't entirely about escape after all. Perhaps it was also about rediscovering why she'd loved mathematics education in the first place, not for the prestige or the publications, but for moments exactly like this one. The change in Tyler seemed to happen overnight. Where he had once dragged himself to math tutoring sessions like a prisoner to execution, he now tackled his homework with determination. The crumpled papers and broken pencils disappeared from his trash can. In their place appeared neatly drawn diagrams, color-coded notes, and worksheets with steadily improving scores. 2 months into their secret arrangement, Diana entered Tyler's room to find a math test proudly displayed on his desk with 92%. Excellent work written across the top in red ink. She smiled, feeling a warmth that had been missing during her university days. Watching Tyler transform from a defeated, anxious child into a confident student brought her a satisfaction that academic publications never had. Their system had evolved beyond written notes. 3 evenings a week, Diana would accidentally be cleaning nearby when Mrs. Chen left, allowing her to slip into Tyler's room for quick 20-minute sessions. They called them math rescue missions, and they always began with Tyler sharing his latest victory or challenge. "I got stuck on this one," he said one evening, pointing to a problem about percentages. "But then I remembered what you said about thinking of percentages as slices of pizza, and it clicked." Diana was about to respond when voices in the hallway made them both freeze. Tyler quickly shoved his math papers under a history textbook as the door opened. Robert Bennett stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Behind him hovered Mrs. Rivera, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Dad," Tyler's voice cracked. "You're home early." Robert's gaze moved from his son to Diana, who had grabbed a duster and was now awkwardly pretending to clean a bookshelf. "I canceled my Tokyo meeting," he said slowly. "Mrs. Rivera mentioned you've been spending a lot of time in Tyler's room lately." Diana's heart pounded, but she maintained a professional demeanor. "I was just finishing up, sir. Your son has been studying very diligently." Robert nodded, his eyes scanning the room before landing on the edge of a math worksheet, peeking out from beneath the history book. "Mrs. Chen tells me your grades have improved dramatically, Tyler. She's quite proud of the progress you've made under her guidance." Diana saw Tyler's jaw tighten. The boy was terrible at hiding his feelings, and his resentment toward the tutor who had claimed credit for his success was plain. "Actually, Dad," Tyler began, but Diana caught his eye and gave a tiny shake of her head. Robert noticed the exchange. "Actually what, son?" Tyler hesitated, then shrugged. "Nothing, just thanks for noticing." Robert studied them both for another moment. "Ms. Wilson, could I speak with you in my office?" "Now, please." Diana followed Robert downstairs to a wood-paneled room that screamed wealth and power. Golf trophies lined one shelf, while framed magazine covers featuring the tech billionaire dominated another. Robert settled behind an imposing desk and gestured for her to sit. "How long have you been tutoring my son?" The direct question caught Diana off guard. "Sir, please don't insult my intelligence," Robert interrupted. "Mrs. Rivera has noticed you spending time with Tyler after his sessions with Mrs. Chen. His math grades have improved from F's to A's in less than 2 months. And just now you were clearly not dusting those already clean bookshelves." Diana took a deep breath. "About 2 months, sir. It started accidentally. I found him struggling late one night and offered a different approach to a problem. It seemed to help, so we continued, without informing me or Mr. Lopez." "Yes, sir." "I apologize for the deception." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Mr. Lopez tells me you have a background in education. What he didn't mention was your doctorate from MIT or your tenure at Princeton." Diana's surprise must have shown on her face because Robert smiled slightly. I had you thoroughly vetted before you were hired. Dr. Wilson, what I couldn't figure out was why someone with your credentials would apply to be a housekeeper. It's complicated, Diana said, echoing what she'd told Tyler weeks earlier. Uncomplicate it for me. Diana met his gaze steadily. I needed a break from academia. The politics, the pressure, the constant battle to be taken seriously as a black woman in a field dominated by white men. I was having panic attacks before lectures. I couldn't sleep, so I stepped away to reassess my career path. Robert nodded, surprising her with his apparent understanding. And somehow in your break from teaching, you've managed to accomplish what 3 highly paid professional tutors could not. Teaching my son mathematics. Tyler is extremely bright, Diana said firmly. He just processes numbers differently than most people. He has what's likely dyscalculia, a specific learning disability with mathematics. It's like dyslexia, but for numbers. A learning disability? Robert frowned. Wouldn't his school have identified that? Not necessarily. It's often overlooked, especially in otherwise high-achieving students. Tyler excels in subjects that don't trigger his dyscalculia, and he's developed excellent coping mechanisms to hide his struggles. Robert was silent for a long moment, fingers steepled under his chin. Finally, he said, Mrs. Chen is fired. Sir, that's not 3 tutors, Dr. Wilson. 3 so-called experts who missed what you identified within weeks, who made my son feel stupid and inadequate. Robert's voice was controlled but cold. I pay for results and Mrs. Chen failed to deliver. Diana felt a twinge of guilt. She hadn't intended to cost anyone their job. I want to hire you properly, Robert continued, as Tyler's personal mathematics tutor. Name your salary. Mr. Bennett, I appreciate the offer, but double whatever Princeton was paying you. Diana blinked. That was a substantial amount of money. Sir, I'm flattered, but I took this job specifically to step away from teaching. And yet you're teaching my son anyway. Robert smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually stern face. You've given Tyler something I couldn't buy with all my billions, confidence. For the first time, he's excited about mathematics instead of terrified by it. Diana couldn't argue with that. The change in Tyler had been remarkable. Think about it, Robert said, rising from his chair to indicate their meeting was over. In the meantime, you're relieved of your housekeeping duties. I'll have Mrs. Rivera reassign your areas. You'll work exclusively with Tyler from now on, officially. Word of Diana's promotion spread quickly through the household staff. Most were supportive, congratulating her on the recognition of her talents. But a few reactions were less positive. Mrs. Chen, clearing out her materials on her final day, gave Diana a cold stare. Quite clever, she said icily. Apply for a menial position, then manipulate your way into a better one. I underestimated you. Diana maintained her composure. That wasn't my intention. I only wanted to help Tyler. Of course, Mrs. Chen's voice dripped with sarcasm. The convenient discovery of a learning disability that only you can address. Diana wanted to explain the science of dyscalculia, to defend her approach, but she recognized the futility. Mrs. Chen had spent her career teaching one way and couldn't accept that her methods might not work for everyone. More concerning was the growing distance she felt from the other household staff. The ease she'd enjoyed with Rosa and Miguel cooled once she became Dr. Wilson, instead of just Diana. Even Mrs. Rivera, who had always been kind, now maintained a professional distance. You're one of them now, Miguel explained when Diana asked him about the change. Upstairs people, not staff. It's nothing personal. Meanwhile, Tyler thrived. Working together officially without secrecy, they made even faster progress. Diana developed customized materials and approaches specifically for his learning style. She coordinated with his teachers at school, explaining dyscalculia and advocating for accommodations that would help him demonstrate his true abilities. Most of Tyler's teachers were receptive, eager to support a student who was clearly trying so hard. But his math teacher, Mr. Phillips, seemed skeptical. His improvement is certainly dramatic, he said during a phone call with Diana, almost suspiciously so. Tyler has been working incredibly hard, Diana defended. I don't doubt that, Mr. Phillips replied, but I need to be certain the work is his own. We've had issues with hired tutors essentially doing the work for struggling students in the past. The implication stung, but Diana kept her voice level. I understand your concern. Perhaps Tyler could take his next exam under special supervision to demonstrate his new skills? Mr. Phillips agreed, and the following week Tyler sat for a monitored exam in the principal's office. He emerged with a proud smile and eventually an 89% score that silenced the skeptics. Everything seemed perfect. Tyler's confidence grew daily. Robert Bennett began arriving home earlier, taking an interest in his son's progress and even sitting in on some of their sessions. Diana found herself enjoying teaching again, reminded of why she'd chosen education in the first place. Then came the email from Princeton. "We hope your sabbatical has been restorative," wrote the department chair. "The board has unanimously approved the Freeman Grant for your proposed research on educational approaches for students with dyscalculia. The position includes a reduced teaching load and 2 dedicated research assistants. We eagerly await your return for the fall semester." Diana stared at her phone, emotions churning. The Freeman Grant was prestigious, exactly what she'd been working toward before her breakdown. And the research topic couldn't be more perfect, inspired by her work with Tyler. It was everything she'd wanted professionally. Yet the thought of leaving Tyler mid-journey filled her with dismay. They had made so much progress, built such trust. How could she abandon him now? She was still pondering the dilemma when she entered the Bennett mansion the next morning. Tyler was waiting for her in their usual study room, his face uncharacteristically serious. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting down her materials. Tyler pushed his latest quiz across the table. A red 67% glared from the top of the page. Diana frowned in confusion. The quiz covered material they had mastered weeks ago. "This doesn't make sense. These are problems you can solve easily now." Tyler avoided her eyes. "I messed up, I guess." Something in his tone made Diana suspicious. She reviewed the paper more carefully, noting that the errors were not typical of dyscalculia. They were deliberate mistakes, correct processes with intentional computational errors. "Tyler," she said gently, "did you do this on purpose?" His eyes filled with tears. "Are you going back to Princeton?" Diana froze. "How did you know about that?" "I heard Dad on the phone with someone from your old university. They were talking about some big research grant you got offered." Tyler's voice cracked. "Everyone leaves eventually." The pain in his voice broke Diana's heart. In her focus on his academic progress, she'd overlooked the emotional attachment he'd formed, the trust issues left by his mother's departure, and his father's emotional distance. "Tyler, listen to me," she said, moving to sit beside him. "Whatever decision I make about Princeton has nothing to do with your worth or how much I care about your progress." "But you'll go," he insisted. "Everyone does, Mom did. And then I'll fail math again, and Dad will send me to that military school and everything will be awful again." Diana put her arm around his shoulders, feeling them shake with suppressed sobs. "Is that why you deliberately failed this quiz? To prepare for when I'm gone?" Tyler nodded miserably. "What's the point of trying if you're just going to leave?" And in that moment, looking at this brilliant, wounded child who had fought so hard to overcome not just a learning disability, but the emotional scars of abandonment, Diana realized the decision wasn't actually difficult at all. Diana sat in Robert Bennett's office, the Princeton offer letter on the desk between them. Outside, rain tapped against the windows of the mansion, matching her unsettled mood. "It's a remarkable opportunity," Robert said, leaning back in his leather chair. "The Freeman Grant is prestigious. Full funding for your research on dyscalculia, inspired by your work with Tyler." He smiled slightly. "I made some calls. Everyone at Princeton speaks highly of your work." "I haven't decided yet," Diana said, though the heaviness in her chest told a different story. She'd been up half the night weighing her options, making lists of pros and cons that ultimately did nothing to clarify her feelings. "Tyler thinks you have," Robert said quietly. "He's convinced you're leaving." Diana sighed. "I know. He deliberately failed a quiz yesterday to prove it didn't matter if he tried or not." Robert's expression darkened. "I was afraid something like this might happen. His mother," he trailed off, then seemed to gather himself. "When Lisa left, she didn't just leave me. She left Tyler, told him she wasn't cut out to be a mother, especially to a child with problems." Diana felt a flash of anger toward a woman she'd never met. "His dyscalculia is not a problem. It's just a different way of processing information. I know that now, thanks to you. Robert stood and walked to the window, watching the rain. I handled it all wrong. After Lisa left, I thought I could fix everything with money. The best schools, the best tutors, the best therapists. When that didn't work, I pushed harder. Threatened Tyler with military school. He shook his head. I was trying to make him stronger, but I was just confirming what his mother had implied, that there was something wrong with him. The vulnerability in the billionaire's voice surprised Diana. In the months she'd worked for him, Robert Bennett had always projected absolute confidence and control. Now he looked like any father struggling to connect with his child. Tyler doesn't need fixing, Diana said gently. He needs understanding. And consistency. Robert turned from the window. Which brings us back to Princeton. He returned to his desk. I won't insult you by trying to outbid a prestigious university. Though I could, he added with a hint of his usual confidence. Diana smiled despite herself. It's not about money, Mr. Bennett. Robert, please. He leaned forward. Diana, be honest with me. What do you want? Not what looks best on a CV or what fulfills some obligation. What would make you happy? The directness of the question caught her off guard. In academia, decisions were always wrapped in layers of professional consideration. What would advance her career? What would secure future funding? What would impress her peers? No one had asked about her happiness in years. I don't know, she admitted. 6 months ago, this grant would have been everything I wanted. Now, she thought of Tyler's face lighting up when he mastered a difficult concept. The trust they'd built. The progress that went beyond academics to touch his sense of self-worth. Now I'm not sure. Robert nodded as if her answer confirmed something for him. I have a proposal. One that might solve everyone's problems. Diana listened as Robert outlined his idea. By the time he finished, she was seeing possibilities she hadn't considered before. A third path that wasn't simply staying or leaving, but something entirely new. I'll need to think about it, she said. Of course. Robert stood, signaling the end of their meeting. Whatever you decide, Diana, know that you've already changed my son's life for the better. That evening, Diana found Tyler in the mansion's library, pretending to read while actually just staring at the pages. When he saw her, his expression became carefully neutral, a child preparing for disappointment. Can we talk? Diana asked, sitting beside him on the window seat that overlooked the garden. Tyler shrugged. About Princeton? Yes, and about that quiz you tanked yesterday. Tyler had the grace to look slightly ashamed. Are you mad? Not mad, sad. Diana turned to face him fully. Sad that you think your progress only matters if I'm here to see it. Doesn't it? Tyler's voice was small. No, your growth is yours. Tyler, the skills you've developed, the confidence you've built, those belong to you, not me or anyone else. But you're the only one who ever understood how my brain works. Diana smiled gently. I helped you understand how your brain works. There's a difference. She tapped his forehead. Everything you need is already in here. I just showed you how to access it. Tyler looked unconvinced. So you are going back to Princeton? I've been offered a position there, yes. A research grant to study educational approaches for students with dyscalculia. Because of me? Tyler asked, sounding surprised. Inspired by you, Diana corrected. You've taught me as much as I've taught you. Tyler looked down at his hands. When do you leave? That depends, Diana said. Your father and I have been discussing some possibilities. She explained Robert's proposal, a new educational foundation, funded by Bennett Technologies, focused on learning differences in mathematics. Diana would lead the research, splitting her time between Princeton and a new learning center right here in the city. The center would develop innovative teaching methods for students with dyscalculia and other learning differences, with Tyler serving as the first test case. So, you'd still be here sometimes? Tyler asked, hope creeping into his voice. 3 days a week. We'd continue our work together, but now it would help other kids too. And when I'm at Princeton, you'd work with another tutor who I'd train personally in the methods that work best for you. Tyler considered this. Dad's okay with this plan? It was his idea. Diana smiled at Tyler's surprise. He wants to support your learning in a way that works for you. And he believes this foundation could help many other students who struggle the way you did. Huh. Tyler seemed to be processing this new image of his father. He never really understood before. Sometimes parents need to learn too, Diana said gently. Speaking of which, your father asked if you'd join us for dinner tonight. He wants to hear your thoughts about the foundation. What would have helped you most when you were struggling? Tyler's eyes widened. He wants my opinion? You're the expert on what it feels like to have dyscalculia. Who better to advise us? For the first time since discovering the Princeton offer, Tyler smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. I have a lot of ideas, actually, especially about those stupid timed tests. They're basically torture for kids like me. Write them all down. Your father's giving us the entire dinner to discuss it. Later that evening, Diana watched from the dining room doorway as Tyler enthusiastically explained his ideas to Robert. The billionaire listened attentively, asking questions and taking actual notes on a small pad. It was perhaps the longest conversation she'd ever witnessed between them, and certainly the most balanced. Miguel appeared beside her with a coffee tray, following her gaze to the father and son. Haven't seen them like this before, he commented quietly. The boy's different with you around. Mr. Bennett, too. Diana nodded, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with academic prestige or professional advancement. They just needed a new equation. The Bennett Foundation for Mathematical Learning Differences launched 6 months later, with Diana as its executive director and Tyler as its first student consultant. The sleek building downtown featured colorful, visually oriented learning spaces and cutting-edge technology. But its most revolutionary feature was its approach, adapting teaching methods to students' learning styles rather than forcing students to adapt to traditional methods. On opening day, Robert Bennett gave a speech that made headlines, not for its business implications but for its personal revelation. Son taught me that success isn't measured by conforming to a single standard, he told the assembled press and educators. True success comes from understanding your unique strengths and finding your own path forward. Tyler, standing proudly beside his father, no longer resembled the defeated boy Diana had first encountered. His most recent report card showed A's and B's across all subjects, including mathematics. More importantly, his eyes held a confidence that came from being truly seen and understood. At Princeton, Diana's research gained attention in educational circles, challenging traditional mathematical pedagogy and advocating for multiple pathways to mathematical understanding. Her schedule was grueling. 3 days at the foundation, 2 at Princeton with papers to write and presentations to give. But unlike her previous academic life, this work brought a satisfaction that went beyond professional recognition. 1 year to the day after Diana had first helped Tyler with his homework, she found a small gift-wrapped package on her desk at the foundation. Inside was a custom-made paperweight shaped like a train, with a note in Tyler's handwriting. For helping me get on the right track. Some people count their money, some count their awards. I count myself lucky to have found a teacher who showed me that different isn't wrong. It's just a different way to get to the right answer. Diana placed the train on her desk, where it would remain for years to come, a reminder that the most valuable lessons often arrive in unexpected ways, and that sometimes, stepping away from the path you've planned is the only way to find the one you're meant to follow. In a quiet moment between foundation meetings, Diana received an email from Robert with the subject line, "Thought you'd want to see this." Attached was Tyler's latest math test, marked with a 94% and a teacher's note. Your approach to this problem was unusual but completely valid. Excellent creative thinking. Diana smiled, remembering her own graduate school professor who had once told her, "There are many paths to the summit. The goal of a true teacher is not to carry the student up your path, but to help them discover their own." Tyler had found his path, and in helping him, Diana had rediscovered hers.